Yes. So what I thought I'll do is maybe give you a preamble as to what the problem is we're trying to solve, and then look at it from the different roles that are normally involved in solving this problem. And then the idea is to have it in an open discussion. So the concept is that you are an executive inside like in a hotel business, and you want to convince people to go from one hotel to the next on a promenade that you own or that you are kind of the manager of. And there are 4 hotels, and you want to see what the movement looks like of people from one to the next. And how do you nudge the people? How do you think about getting them from one place to another? And the original story, this is actually a real story from a while ago, but I'm going to give you kind of like a slightly nuanced version. And that is that if you run a happy hour in Hotel 1 that has got live entertainment and a whole lot of other things going on in there, and that it's a hotel that is, or a bar with a hotel that's normally busy in the afternoon, you want to move your happy hour to say 2 p.m. and you want to run specials on strawberry daiquiris. And the reason is because a strawberry daiquiri is not something that people will typically order unless it is something that you specifically like. So it's not like a beer or a whiskey or any of the other kind of alcoholic beverages that normally will be bought in certain kinds of volumes throughout a night. But anyway, so what you do is that, and the other thing about a strawberry daiquiri, if you don't know this, but it's a fairly cheap drink to make, and yet it's a fairly expensive on the menu. So the thing is that you want to run the happy hour, and then you want to be able to get those people who bought those daiquiris to go to the next happy hour at the next hotel where you're going to go for dinner, and the next hotel that you know that it's going to be for an after dinner drink. And then you want to get those people to either go to the really upmarket hotel for a nightcap, or they will go back to the first hotel where you've got night entertainment that will then start at about 8 or 9 or 10 at night and then go out into the early morning hours. So you want to be able to see how you can get this crowd to move from one to the next by designing a series of interventions. So now, if you think of that story is normally told from a business point of view. So a business person would say to you that I understand my business and I know that I can get people to go from one state to another state by running this thing called an happy hour. And for us, I'm not sure about you, but happy hour to me has never really meant much. It's just that you get drinks cheaper because you buy one, get one free. And in most cases, you can't even drink your second drink depending on what you're buying. But what you want to do with this special on a daiquiri is give it a 50% off, and the person has to scan a QR code, or they have to leave a phone number or a message or something that you want to know that there's at least a base identity that gets tracked when this person has left some evidence. So the thing is that when a business person tells a story and you want to now implement it in kind of more modern times, if you think about this original story came from the late 80s, early 90s. But if you had to tell it today, what you're now going to have to do is you have to get your data scientist involved, and you're going to have to get your technologist involved. When you get your data scientist involved, they're going to want to know where you're going to get the data from. Are you going to get access to the data? How are we going to do feature engineering? Are we going to be able to do the distributions to understand that we are getting the correct volumes of data to be able to analyze anything? They want to understand how you want to nudge the people and a whole lot of other things that normally are kind of within the data science kind of context. And then you have the technologist that would only care about, is this thing going to run? Are we going to be able to intervene potentially in real time? So can we collect the data the moment the person rings up a daiquiri on a point of sale terminal? At that very moment, what you want to do is track the fact that an item was sold and then bring that and feed it to your data set. So is that possible? So now if you bring all of that together, what I want to just, I'll show you in 2 bits of context before we start the conversation. So the first bit of context is that if you had to think of the role of the business person, so the business person wants to understand the impact. So they want to know, if I can get this collective of people to stay within my business ecosystem, what will the impact be economically on my returns if I do provide a special on the Daiquiri that I could have earned as an income? Will that be enough of an attractor, or do I need to run a special on something else? Do I need to put up events or do anything else that I need to do? So that means that in understanding this impact, you want to be able to track the projects that your guys are going to work on and that you need to review. So you want to know that, yes, there's going to be a project for a recommender and for a way to nudge people and to provide contextual messaging. And you want to be able to test each one of those options as a business person, because you might want to run some experiments. So you might want to say that, why don't we ask people to provide them with their phone numbers and to contact them with the next special, because it could be up at the next hotel, but you're not going to know which one. And we will notify you. So you obtain details from that person. They need to sign up just by providing their phone number, or they scan a QR code, or they text it, or they WhatsApp it. When you get it, you now have the entry point for your next outbound communication. So now what you need to do is you want to then provide them with messaging and then observe their responses. And then you want to take a control group, or one of your test groups, and you'll have a control group that you have to decide how you want to test this, obviously. But you want to take another group that you are not going to message at all, and you're going to rely entirely on your above the line messaging and your in the hotel entertainment or whatever to get them to then to act on what they need to act on. But it means at the end of the day that you're going to be able to run all these different experimentation scenarios, test what was going on, without having to go and build a very complex environment. So that means the business person wants to know, can I take my story? Can I get the impact? Can I get the result? Can I track this continuously? And is it doing the right thing from a business point of view? They don't care about accuracy and recall rates and predictability and any of those sort of things. They just care about the fact that, will this have an impact? The data scientist, like I said earlier, they're more worried about, can I get the data? Can I create my feature stores? Can I build models? Can I set up the experiments appropriately? Do I have the right tooling? Can I do this without a huge obstacle? Can I set up experiments without having to spend months doing it? I want to be able to do it within hours. I want to be able to configure it very quickly and be able to get it into an environment where you can implement it with a technologist, so that the technology person wants to track the performance, make sure that you've got an architecture that is resilient, that is implemented in an environment where you know that you can execute properly. And then you want to be able to provide feedback to the data scientist and to the business person to say, yes, we are getting the volumes that we are expecting or not, or whatever the key metrics are that you're going to be tracking through this exercise. So those are the 3 roles for, I guess, today's conversation. So the next bit of context is to see, what does it look like if you had to see it in virtual form or in drawing form. So let me just share my screen quickly and then we can talk about that. Okay, so here's kind of what it looks like. So you got the promenade. Jess, you should have done this part. You got the hotels. You've got your people that at any point during the day will probably occupy all of the places that you are looking at. But we're seeing that, let's say, hotel 1 or location 1 is the one with the most activity we anticipating at a certain point during the day. What you intend doing is to look at the volume of sales over time per hotel. And what you want to do is that you will attempt to create this kind of effect where there's a part of the day where there's nothing. You want to maximize and you want to bring it down again. So classically what will happen is that you would have this kind of effect. So for a part of the day or for the part of whatever you're working on, there'll be some activity and then there'll be nothing. What you're trying to do is to get this effect where you can push people and trying to minimize the downtime that you have in getting to these peaks of sales from one location to the next. So that's kind of what the business person is looking at in their spreadsheet. They run some analysis and they say that if we only had to focus on, like this one that we looked earlier, this is there are not too many opportunities exploited, and we want to find out how we can push it in different directions so we can broaden our revenue base. So that means that what you want to do as time goes by, so you want to break these up into time brackets. So you've got phases throughout the day. And for this exercise, let's just say if you look at phase 1, 2, and 3, let's allocate phase 1 to hotel 2 and to 3. And then what you want to do is you want to have a spike to get from, if I think of the next morning, it must go back to 1. So you want to get people back to 1. So you want to get this group of people to go there. You want that group of people then to go there and make sure that it's sufficiently exciting to do that. And then you want that group of people to go back there. So you keep them in your ecosystem with different kinds of activities. So you start with an afternoon activity at Hotel 1. You move to Hotel 2, like we said earlier, for dinner, maybe some movie or other kind of light entertainment at 3. And then for those who are the diehards who really want to go and have another wave of daiquiris or switch it for something else, go back to number 1. So the construct, and maybe this is now for the kind of conversation, is that if you had to think of it in the kind of way that we often look at this, when you see time and you see the act of what you want people to perform and you look at the location of where it's done, you want to be able to track time, location, and act data in real time or in an offline fashion across all of these situations to be able to predict what you need to do with the individuals that are participating in one particular activity, so that you can find out what the network looks like, use the network effect to influence them to move to the next and to the next hotel or to the next and the next location where you want them to get to perform whatever the act is. So that means you need a diversity in actions that you want to validate socially. You want a spectrum of time that you know that it's going to give you an activity, and you want a location that you know where items are going to take place. And those 3 dimensions together will give you an understanding of how you can influence that system. So I figured that's kind of where I want to leave it, but that's the entry point into the conversation.
So I have a question about this. It seems relatively straightforward, actually, in theory. And I don't feel like there's very much that I could say right now that would challenge it. However, the question is, it's one thing to be in theory, but has this worked in practice?
It has worked in practice. If you had to think of at the time when this happened, the CFO who wanted the revenue shifts to happen could clearly see that there were very big differences between Hotel 1 and 2 especially. And you could see how people were moved from 1 to 2, because if 1 gets too raucous in the afternoon going into the early evening, you'll see families and certain people of certain age brackets will move to the second hotel for further entertainment. So that means that if somebody is going to want to watch music, they will not at the same time want to watch comedy. So what you'll do is you'll move the comedy to either the early afternoon in Hotel 1, and you move the live entertainment that is light entertainment to 2, and you move the more party entertainment back to 1 later in the evening. And you could see that people will move between different categories, and that's why the context of the act. So if the act is comedy, or the act is music, or the act is social, each human activity or each human set of activities resulted in certain kinds of people only wanting to go to certain places. And yes, it had a big impact. It ran for probably 8 years as what was known at the time as a strawberry run. And that was to trying to get people to go up and down. And the people who ended up at Hotel 3, that was a very different class of upmarket hotel, were the ones who did 1 and 2, that was more relaxed, and eventually got to 3 because somebody would take out like their spouse for a dinner or something like that, because it was a very different style of facility. So in this case, you could see that if you had 1 and 2 in also close proximity, people can walk there. If you're going to go to 3, you might need an Uber in kind of modern times. At the time, if you need a taxi or you needed to drive. So that means that if you're going to partner and bring somebody like a taxi in or an Uber company into this, you have to bring the Uber data into this as well, because you're going to see when Uber basically transports people from one of your locations to another, or from outside of where you are at into your area. And if you do a corporate deal with Uber, you can get access to that data, especially if you are the one originating the rides. So that could then add to your data. So yes, it was a fairly real scenario.
Okay. And I mean, this is the structure that's being replicated in a digital space. Ultimately, this is nudges, right?
Is it a nudge, or is it, if you had to just think about it for a moment, that the classical data collection mechanism that you're going to be going through is that if you had to think of, every hotel will have a ledger, okay? And in the ledger, you're going to have your time and the items that were bought, and if the customer participated, if they are staying there or not staying there. That means that you would have basically time series data and a ledger from every single hotel that you'll be able to use to be able to figure out if people are moving from one location to another. And you'll be able to hopefully match make the fact that if person A was there, you can pick up person A there and person A there, and you'll be able to reproduce your map to show that people have gone on the journey that you created for them. So the thing is that, if it's just a standard nudge, how would you nudge the person?
By creating the environment that they are most likely to be drawn to.
Yes, so
or is that just facilitating?
Is the nudge, the banner that appears? And if you think about it, the ultimate complexity in measuring if recommenders are doing the right thing or not. So let's just take a classical example in the kind of ecosystem setting, is that, let's say that you want to set up an overhead display that appears behind the barman, or in the kind of social place, wherever that social place is. And it doesn't matter if it's in an area where there's alcohol served or anything else served, doesn't matter, but you want to put a banner there. And the digital banner's content is determined based on the voluminous of activity that happens in that facility. So the recommender needs to figure out that I need to explore options based on the context that gets set. And the context that gets set is based on a threshold of sales in that facility. So if you're selling too many daiquiris, you then want to dynamically shift it to something else, and then let the overhead display now, let the recommender figure out what it needs to show next. If the crowd gets too raucous, you then only want to promote water and orange juice and, I don't know, soda pops. Something to get everybody to kind of calm down and whatever it might be. But the thing is that is one kind of visual influencer panel. But then to get the person personally connected means that you either then have to get to the person serving them to know who and what they need to serve and provide recommenders to them, or you have to do it from the person who's actually doing the purchase. And when you are in a social situation, do you ever look at your mobile device? That's kind of the overriding question, isn't it?
So there is a distinctive difference then between the journey and the nudges within that journey. So you could
Yeah.
have a journey that's set up, a number of different journeys that is set up that would appeal to different character types. And within those journeys, you could have nudges that would shuffle people into sort of mini journeys within those.
Yes.
And those would be the nudges themselves. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But then think about it. So the business person who's going to draw this on the board or have a conversation with somebody about it will quite quickly realize that this is pretty easy to draw, but not so easy to implement. Because if you're going to have to now provide the technological infrastructure, and let's take a couple of examples of technologies that you can start using now for this. Let's say that you use a geoperimeter tracker. All right, so let's say that you use anything that is geoperimeter tracking. So geoperimeter tracking means that it will create a geoperimeter around your facility, and anybody that moves in that facility from a mobile point of view, you will know what that mobile is that is moving in that space. Okay, and a lot of companies do that already. You can go to most restaurants and, I mean, anything from airports to hospitals to hotels at the moment, all over the world, do geofencing or geo-based tracking. Though that means that you will know that there are people moving in that area. If they pay with their phone, you then want to interface with the payment system. So that means that the geo environment will be for data collection, and the payment system will be hopefully the delivery mechanism for kind of additional data and maybe for coupons that you can then present to the person based on the data that you have collected. So if a person has been there the entire day and you can track back how much money they spent with you, you can then give them an incentive to invite some friends and get more discount, or some other way if the payment was done digitally, because you'll be able to track the fact that geo-tagged phone has now performed the payment with you, because you control the point of sale data. You also control the PLU, so you control the price lookups that happen inside the facility. So that means that you will know, exactly what kind of items are typically bought by that particular person who's been geo-tracked. If we include IoT, you can then get far more clever, because then what you do is you can start putting the geo devices with everybody sitting at tables, and every table can become its own private space, and you can track whoever sits at a particular table or who stands in a certain location, and know that those people have moved or not moved, and then decide if you want to use your overhead banner or some other ways, or find a mechanism to then interface with them, either through a human that is in the system that gets told to interface with the people, or through their payment coupon system or the payment messaging system that they have connected to. And that means that you need to partner with your bank to be able to get that done with you. So the moment they pay for something in your bar, you want to be able to send a text message back to them to say, yes, you have bought this, and here's the offer that goes with that you know exactly the context, where they're at, why they bought it, why they're there for that moment.